Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we're digging into something pretty universal, I think. We're looking at source material, dealing with setbacks, big ones, the kind most of us really try to just bury and forget.
That's so true. There's this huge reluctance, isn't there, to talk about failures openly. We worry people will look down on us or we'll have to admit we're just, not good enough.
Yeah, and even when we do talk about it, maybe years later, we often frame it using what our sources call the comeback narrative,
Yeah.
the Nisi idea in Mandarin, which sounds great, very heroic.
But it can feel a bit forced, right? Like you're trying to quickly slap a coat of paint on something that was actually quite raw and painful, trying to make a scar look like a metal before it's even healed properly. The messiness gets lost.
Exactly. And what's interesting in these materials is the argument that you don't need to erase that pain, that actually those really tough moments, the lowest points, that's where the richest soil is found.
I like that analogy, like falling hard into the mud, but finding that exact spot grows the strongest wheat next season. So this isn't about just positive thinking, it's a framework.
Right. So the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. Figure out how we recover from these stumbles because they will happen. And more than that, how we can skillfully use that raw experience, that failure, as actual fuel, a springboard.
Yeah, a springboard for creativity, for growth. And looking at the materials, we've kind of distilled it down into three main angles. First, how we define failure itself, seeing it more like data.
Okay, data, not disaster.
Exactly. Second, the actual process of converting that failure, that pain, into usable fuel. And third, building the kind of perspective, the mindset you need to actually, get back up and try again effectively.
All right, let's unpack that first one, redefining failure. The sources talk a lot about this pressure in the creative world, this sort of first time must explode environment.
Oh, definitely. You see it everywhere, don't you?
Yeah.
Social media, startup culture. There's this implicit idea that if you launch something, it has to be an instant hit, a one-hit wonder.
And if it's not, if your project doesn't go viral or your first draft isn't amazing,
Then the internal voice kicks in hard. You failed. You can't do this. This isn't for you. And that pressure is so intense, it often stops people from even trying things that may involve stumbling. You basically quit before you even have a chance to fail.
it's paralyzing.
Yeah.
But the sources quickly counter this, right? They point out that almost no one, even the top creators we look up to, gets it right on the first try.
Absolutely not. That's just not how creativity works. It's iterative. It requires learning, which means it requires things not working out sometimes. Failure is like baked into the process.
I had a very vivid memory of this. Early in my design career, I got this logo project, seemed like a dream client, a new coffee brand, and I poured everything into it, spent like half a month crafting what I genuinely thought was the perfect solution.
Okay, so what did perfect look like in that context?
Oh, it was very trendy then. High contrast colors, intricate layout, really sharp, fashionable fonts. And because I wanted to seem super smart, I made this massive 20-page presentation explaining my whole design philosophy, the brand story. It was honestly pretty self-absorbed in retrospect.
Right. You were pretty confident going in. And the client?
The client's reaction was swift
Yeah.
and brutal,
Yeah.
complete rejection. The only feedback I got was, and I remember this exactly, it's not the feeling we want. That was it.
Yeah.
No discussion, no chance to revise, just nope.
Oof.
Yeah. Oof is right. I genuinely considered deleting all my design software that night. I thought, okay, I'm done. Clearly, I'm not cut out for this.
And that's the danger zone, isn't it? When you take that external rejection and internalize it as a final verdict on your ability. But you didn't delete the software. The sources mention you forced yourself to approach it differently.
I did. It took a bit, but I tried to treat it less like a personal attack and more like, okay, what information is here? Like unboxing the failure, as the sources put it.
So what did the data show when you unboxed it?
Well, three really painful but useful things. First, I totally missed the tone they asked for. They wanted simple, Nordic, quiet. I gave them loud and trendy. Big miss.
Okay.
Second, my communication was all wrong. I was so busy telling my story, my brilliant design process, that I forgot their actual need was just a simple, recognizable logo.
Mm-hmm. Focus on yourself, not the client's problem.
Exactly. And third, that massive 20-page presentation, it just overwhelmed them, caused total choice paralysis, way too much information.
See, that's the pivot right there. That moment of analysis, that whole experience wasn't a failure in the sense of a final judgment on you. It was data. Very specific, maybe painful, but usable data.
Right. It told me what went wrong, why it went wrong. It was like an experiment report, not a final grade on my potential.
Precisely. Every attempt, successful or not, gives you information. Does this approach work? Is this technique right for this problem? That's the core of redefining failure. It's feedback, not a verdict.
Okay, so understanding its data is step one. But sitting with that, that sting of rejection, how do you actually use it? How do you stop it from just becoming an excuse or making you give up? That feels like the next big hurdle.
It is. And that brings us neatly to the second major strategy from the source material: converting that failure into fuel. They break this down into a really practical two-step process: dismantle and pivot, or chai and zigging in Mandarin.
Dismantle and pivot.
Okay.
Okay, let's start with dismantle, Chai. So you don't just toss the failed attempt away.
No, absolutely not. You treat it like a valuable piece of machinery that broke down. You need to take it apart carefully and figure out exactly what happened. The sources suggest asking 3 very specific, objective questions.
Okay, what are they?
First, where exactly was the problem? You need to pinpoint it. No vague answers. Second, why did it happen? Get to the root cause, and importantly, no excuses allowed here. Be honest.
Right. No, the client just didn't get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And third, what specific lesson did I learn from this? And you have to actually write this down. Make it concrete, actionable.
Okay, so applying that dismantle process to my coffee logo disaster.
Yeah.
The problem was the style mismatch and the information overload.
Hmm.
The why was my misinterpretation of the brief and my own ego focusing on showing off rather than solving their need.
Mm-hmm.
And the lessons, the actual fuel points I extracted were super specific. 1, always get the client to give me 3 core descriptive words for the field before I even start sketching.
Smart.
2, never present more than 3 distinct options. Keep it focused. And 3, keep any presentation slides incredibly simple, 1 key point per page, max.
See, those aren't just vague, be better next time thoughts.
Eh.
They're concrete operational changes. That's the rocket fuel.
Yeah.
And this process works whether you're a designer, a coder, a writer, a salesperson.
Yeah, I can see that. For a coder, it might be realizing they used the wrong library. And the fuel is always test dependencies and isolation first.
Mm-hmm.
For a salesperson, maybe they realize they talk features, not benefits. And the fuel is start every pitch by asking about the client's biggest pain point.
Exactly. The source material argues that the very place where it hurt, where you got rejected or stuck, that specific point, contains the most potent energy for pushing you forward next time. It's the engine.
Okay, so you've dismantled the failure, you've extracted the fuel. Now you need to actually use it to go somewhere. That brings us to the second part. Pivot or zung?
Right. The pivot principle is all about mindset. It's understanding that an obstacle, a failure, isn't necessarily a dead end. It's often more like a signpost, forcing you to change direction. And sometimes that forced turn is exactly what you needed.
The sources had a couple of really good examples of this, didn't they? There was this student, Xiaoming.
Yeah, Xiaoming and the horror movie poster, he was completely stuck. He'd done like 10 revisions trying to make the main actor's face look scary for the poster, but it just wasn't working. Too soft, too bright. The client was getting frustrated.
Right, he was hitting a wall trying the same approach over and over.
Exactly. The pivot he needed was radical. He had to abandon the actor's face entirely. Instead, he shifted focus to just a silhouette of the villain, dark, menacing outlines, this kind of metallic texture, and a really striking blood spatter effect on the title.
So a complete change in direction visually.
Totally. And the client loved it instantly. It got approved, and apparently the poster went viral. He had to pivot away from his original idea, the one that wasn't working, to find the solution.
That's a great creative example. And then there's the huge business one, Post-it notes.
Oh, yeah. Classic story. 3M was trying to invent a super strong adhesive, like a revolutionary super glue.
Right, aiming for maximum stickiness.
And what they actually created was the exact opposite. A really weak adhesive that barely stuck to anything. It was, by all accounts, a total failure based on their original goal. Destined for the trash heap.
A failed experiment.
But then came the pivot. Someone within 3M, the story goes, started using this useless, weak glue on scraps of paper as temporary bookmarks in his hymnal. They wouldn't damage the pages, but would stay put.
Ah, so he saw a completely different application for the failed product.
Exactly. He pivoted the purpose. He realized the weakness was actually its strength for a different need. That failed super glue became the Post-it note, sold globally for, 50 years now?
Incredible. It really makes you think sometimes that barrier, that failure, is maybe the universe or destiny or just circumstance gently nudging you, pushing you toward the path you were actually meant to be on.
That's a key insight from the sources. Giving up on the wrong direction is crucial. It's not the same as giving up entirely. It's about recognizing when to pivot.
Which leads perfectly into the final piece of this puzzle, doesn't it? The power of perspective. Because you can have the data, you can know you need to pivot, but if your mind keeps screaming, you failed, it's hard to move.
Absolutely. This is the final critical translation step. Preventing your brain from automatically coding that setback, that scar, as waste or proof of inadequacy.
It's about changing the internal narrative. The difference between saying, I failed, and, okay, I learned something important, is purely perspective, but it changes everything.
Let's go back to your logo story again. You could have listened to that voice saying, I'm finished, and deleted the software. Game over.
Easily could have.
But instead, you consciously adopted a different internal operating system, as the sources might put it. You thought, okay, this attempt didn't work, but the next one can, using what I just learned.
Right. And I took those 3 specific fuel points, ask for the core words, limit options, simplify the presentation, and applied them directly to the very next project I got, which happened to be another Nordic-style brand.
And the outcome?
Completely different. Smooth process. The client approved the design within, like, 3 hours. And bonus, that project led directly to 2 more referrals.
There it is. The initial failure, the rejection, the scar. It stopped being a point of shame and literally became the launch pad for your next success.
Right.
Because you changed your perspective and used the data.
So it's about building that resilience, that ability to reframe. The sources mention that creators don't need constant inspiration as much as they need recoverability.
Exactly. It's about bouncing back effectively. And they offer a couple of really small, practical daily actions to help train that resilient perspective.
Okay, practical tips are always good. What are they?
The first one is keeping a setback diary, or fun chari G as they called it. Sounds fancy, but it's super simple. Just take 30 seconds before you go to sleep each night.
30 seconds. Okay, manageable.
And just write down one single sentence. Today I learned, followed by the specific lesson. So for your example, it might have been, today I learned clients want simplicity. Start drafts in black and white first.
Ah, okay. So it forces you to extract that lesson, that fuel point every day, even from small things.
Precisely. Writing it down does something powerful. It externalizes the issue, creates a little distance, it makes the burden feel lighter, and over time it actually makes you a bit bolder because you're constantly reinforcing the idea that setbacks, learning, and not disaster.
I like that. Okay, what's the second tip?
Celebrate tiny victories. This is about rewiring your brain's reward system. Don't just wait for the huge final win to feel good.
So acknowledge the small steps along the way.
Yeah, like did you finally push through a really difficult revision, even if the project isn't done? Okay, acknowledge that mentally, maybe grab that coffee you wanted. Did you manage to analyze a rejection objectively? That's a win. Maybe even post something small on social media about making progress if that works for you.
It's about giving your brain little hits of dopamine for the effort, for the process, not just the outcome.
Exactly. The brain loves rewards. If you reward the effort, the analysis, the small pivots, your brain starts to associate trying, even potentially failing, with positive reinforcement. It becomes more willing to dare.
So putting it all together for everyone listening, the core idea is to consciously change your internal mantra. When something goes wrong, try to catch that immediate, I failed thought.
And replace it. Replace it with something like, okay, I learned something valuable today, or this experience cost me some time, but the lesson will save me more later.
If you can consistently make that mental shift, the setback stops being just a painful memory and actually becomes potential energy. A wing, not a weight.
Well put. We're not trying to learn how to never fall. We're practicing how to fly, which includes recovering from turbulence. The truly resilient creator isn't someone who avoids all setbacks. That's impossible.
Right. There's someone who ensures every single setback helps them grow stronger roots, more resilience for the next time.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's quickly recap our deep dive then. We started by talking about redefining failure, shifting from seeing it as a verdict on your worth to seeing it as valuable, usable data.
Then we looked at the practical steps for conversion. Dismantle the failure by asking specific questions. What went wrong? Why? What did I learn? And then pivot, using that learning to change direction effectively.
And finally, we talked about the crucial power of perspective training your mind through things like a setback diary and celebrating small wins to consistently translate these difficult experiences into fuel, not waste.
So here's a small challenge for you listening right now. Tonight, before you sleep, just try it once. Take those 30 seconds, write down one thing, just one, that you learned today?
Could be anything. Today I learned taking a 5-minute walk actually helped me solve that coding bug. Or today I learned the client responded better when I asked questions instead of just presenting. Anything.
Don't dismiss how powerful that tiny habit can be, that deliberate, conscious act of reframing. That's the training. That's how you build the mental muscle to consistently turn failure into fuel.
Hopefully this framework gives you some tools to face your next inevitable setback, not with dread, but maybe, just maybe, with a little bit of curiosity about what you might learn. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.